I was lucky to be coaching within Scottish Rugby when I suppose coaching evolved, became more about the person, the sports psychology side of it.
Welcome to the Sporting Mindset Show. Our chat today is with rugby coach Colin Phillips. Colin talks about his evolution as a coach and the changes in coach development in general. He reveals his influences during his time at Scottish Rugby and his strengths around building relationships with fellow coaches and players. Enjoy the podcast. Colin Phillips, welcome.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Nicknames, have you had any?
Yep, had a few over the years. Nothing too exciting. One as a child growing up, a proper family nickname. I was nicknamed Mowgli from the Jungle Book. Probably similar features, my dark hair and the way it sat. That kind of just was mainly mum, dad, brother and sister. Didn't really stick with the family circle, which is quite good. And now not having any hair, people would be looking a bit funny at me. I spent quite a bit of time in the west coast of Ireland working in an outdoor centre. One of my good friends there nicknamed me Haggis after the Scottish delicacy, which kind of stuck while overseas in Ireland and hung around, which was interesting. But again, going back to Scotland, it disappeared. And the one that probably stuck around the longest was just my initials, basically CP, which was given to me by one of my teammates who played at the rugby club in Aberdeen. He'd come over from Australia. Now, having lived in Australia for the best part of nearly 7 years, I realised that the Aussies like to shorten everything. Colin became CP. And funnily enough, people have over the years asked, why CP? It's as simple as that was my initials.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And that stuck. And yeah, Col has come up a few times here in Australia just to shorten it. But yeah, nothing too exciting and nothing too controversial either.
But mind you, when you were in Ireland and you got nicknamed Haggis, did it have an impact on how you saw yourself and your personality, do you think? Did you own it because it was Scottish?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I don't think it massively impacted my personality. Yeah, it was quite cool because a lot of people didn't know what Haggis was, and it was a good conversation starter, and allowed me to talk about Scotland, and just proud of being Scottish in my background. And it quite often ended up in a conversation or the question of, oh, you're from Scotland, Celtic or Rangers? Try to figure out my religion, which my response was Aberdeen, which totally bamboozled most of the kids. But that's we'll always avoid politics and religion. That's good life advice from my dad.
Good advice, yeah. And in terms of Scotland, you did a lot of work in the pathways area there in Scotland. How important was that in your formation of your rugby beliefs or your rugby philosophy and the work you did there in Scotland?
Yeah, I think growing up, rugby was a big part of kind of family life as well. Played at a small rugby club in the sort of northeast of Scotland, and you had to do, wasn't huge numbers. It was dad was a coach, dad was on the committee, friends, parents were in and around, and most of them, a lot of them still are. Nearly 40 plus years later, they're still involved in the clubs. But some of the fondest memories of kind of rugby growing up were going to watch Scotland, getting on the bus, spending 5 hours on the bus to get to Edinburgh to watch Scotland play and be at Murrayfield, or go to the rugby club to watch Scotland play on TV, or get up in the middle of the night to watch the kind of World Cup games or Scotland when they were touring. So yeah, hugely passionate about Scotland. Small country, not massively successful, but kind of group that worked real hard. And extremely privileged that was lucky enough to get a role within Scottish Rugby in the development area to start with, working in a couple of regions where I'd grown up, played my rugby, friends played rugby, now friends' children play rugby. And I had the opportunity as a development officer to introduce more people to the game, support those who want to work their way into the pathway. And then laterally, find us 8-9 years in Scotland, was working in the academies for the region, kind of with the better players, the more ambitious players, the players that were on that journey to be professional rugby players at the male and female side of the game.
Do you think going through that process of basically working through development, the pathways, and then you've had your experience here where you've done a lot of the state team, you've actually gone through the whole gamut of state teams in Perth. Do you think going through that process and taking those steps is a really good way for a coach to develop as a coach?
Yeah, definitely. And it allowed me to always, I felt like I was always being challenged. There was time to actually practice, get out there, make mistakes, not always get it right, be around people. And one of the kind of real lucky things in Scotland, and it's a small country, it's a small pool of people, you can get around Scotland pretty damn quickly. Within 2.5, 3 hours, I could be at Murrayfield working with or learning from coaches with more experience. Could be over at the Glasgow Warriors environment, getting that same experience. And I found we could go pick up information, go away, try it, spend time tweaking it to, I suppose, my personality, my needs, the needs of my area. So I think as a coach, for coaches to develop time sticking on at one level in one area to actually hone their skills and make it what works for them best. Too many people I definitely see kind of want to jump to the next level and the next level and next level, whereas time in that environment or an environment and just figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Because if everyone's just delivering in the same way, it's going to be pretty bland and pretty easy for other people, other countries, other teams to combat you because they know what's coming.
You mentioned being able to gain access to coaches with more experience. Who were some coaches who had a big impact on your coach development?
I suppose one of the early ones that had a real big impact and somebody that kind of over the years kind of kept in touch was Richie Gray. He was a development officer when I was playing, and he just such a kind of great way to deliver rugby.
So what would he do? What would he do specifically in terms of his delivery that just had the impact with you?
He made it fun. He made sure you were working hard. He held high standards, but it was enjoyable to be around on and off the field. He had a real good balance of this is time to work hard, this is time to enjoy. He was extremely passionate about the game, and he was always willing to give you time, to challenge you, to support you, to point you in the right direction, and make sure that you had those opportunities. And I was lucky enough to, once I left school, was working in Scottish Rugby. Richie was still working at Scottish Rugby, and when you're at conferences, workshops, he was always giving you more support and ideas. And as he progressed through the ranks in his own line of business with roundabout the collision and the contact skills and travelling the world and spending time in NFL, spent some time in Aussie rules to find out different ways to coach the game and different elements around it, especially around about that contact and tackle. I was always willing to share that information. It's someone that, kind of try and sort of replicate in that, make sure that the players that are working with me, around me, enjoy what they're doing, they're learning, they feel comfortable that they can ask for information, and basically as a coach really cares about where you're going and what you're doing.
Do you have particular strategies that you use regularly to ensure that they are working hard yet they are having fun? Is there a formula that you use?
I think it's awareness, watching. We talked earlier about having a session plan, having a plan, and I was definitely, as a young coach, had a session plan. It's like you've got 20 minutes on this, and this is the drill, and this is the practice, and 15 minutes on this, and 10 minutes of this, and stick to it. Definitely over the years, become more aware, be more comfortable just watching, reading the room. Are players laughing, smiling, enjoying? Are they frustrated? Are they stressed? And just trying to manage that, apply pressure at the right time, put them under a little bit more stress so they can learn, they can make mistakes. But at certain times in half-time in the game, take that pressure off, make sure they can relax and focus and concentrate. So I think it's just that just watching and being patient and taking a minute to read the room.
And does that come from experience only?
For me, it has. I've seen young people do it naturally, and maybe whether I did it naturally as younger or it was just the way coach education was 30 years ago. Yeah, 25.
What was coaching education like 30 years ago?
Coach education in Scotland, when I started, was you turned up, you watched a coach deliver a session, and you went away. And it was all about skills and drills and very little games. This is how you do it. And I was lucky to be coaching within Scottish Rugby when I suppose coaching evolved. It became more about the person, the sports psychology side of it.
How much now do you think we should be putting into technical, tactical, as opposed to art of coaching?
I think it's got to be 80-20 on the art of coaching side of it. There's so much. It's not to say it was wrong when I first started coaching, but I suppose coaching resources were other people. Nowadays, you can jump on the internet, jump on YouTube, jump on your phone, drive into a session, and you can get more drills than you can shake a stick at. And that's easy to pick a drill. It's the hard part is being able to communicate what needs to be done, being aware and watching and assessing the process that the players are going through, where they are in their cycles of learning. Right? Do they get it? Do you need to challenge them? Are they not understanding? How do we break it down? I think the best coaches have that relationship and understand and awareness to get that balance and drive players at the right time and pull them back at the right time, and not just deliver a drill or a practice. Because anyone can jump on YouTube and show a clip and try and run a drill. Fixing it and having the right conversation with the player at the right time to have an impact is a real challenge at times, and a skill that takes time to develop.
And that's something that you're dealing with on an individual basis, yet you're in a team sport. So how difficult is it within a group of potentially 15, 20, 25 players to have those individual connections?
It's going to be very difficult to have a connection with everybody. It was key that you got the respect of everyone on your team. You don't necessarily need to be your mates. I suppose most rugby teams are coached by a team of coaches. So I suppose one of the strengths will be the strength in that coaching team. Are you all the same? If you're all the same and you all connect with the same 2/3 of your squad, then there's a third of your squad's going to miss out on that development. So having a coaching team that tick multiple boxes, got lots of different experiences, and connect with as many of the players in your squad as possible is important. But being self-aware, as each coach being self-aware that they can adapt and tweak. And I suppose over time, in my scenario, I've coached for a long time, so I had the opportunity to work with lots of different players of different experience, backgrounds, cultures, interests, and some have made it, some haven't. So I've got lots of experience to fall back on to go. This I've seen. Take, for example, the Wesley College players that I've got at the moment, the 25 in the first team squad. I could probably identify players in the past that I've worked with that have got similar interests, needs, and can think back on, well, that worked, that didn't work, I can try this. And having conversations with other coaches from other sports, staff, within the teaching staff within the school is always important to go and just get different ideas. I've coached for a long time, but I've got a lot to learn still.
There's a really good example there in terms of understanding how much you've got to learn. Is that something you recognise straight away, or when you first started to coach, did you feel confident, I know the game, I know how to play it, and you was probably telling yourself you probably knew more than what you did? Now you're years down the track, you have a better level of self-awareness. Do you then go, oh no, I've got so much to learn, I've been around here for a while, but I've still got so much to learn? Is that a natural process for a coach to go through, do you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely goes through waves of you know more. I feel like I know more, probably getting challenged. I was quite lucky. There was two colleagues and bosses of mine at Scottish Rugby. One, he actually left and moved back to New Zealand, and he said, one of the reasons he left, he felt like he wasn't learning. He needed to get back into an environment where he was being challenged, and coached at a very good level in Scotland, and then got back to New Zealand and got in the academy system. Did some work with the Wellington Hurricanes, and I went caught up with him in New Zealand in 2005. He was like, I'm learning, I'm being challenged, I forgot. And he talked about that, going through waves and cycles. And one of the coaches and performance managers at Scottish Rugby, I remember one of the very early days had said to me, just because you're wearing a thistle doesn't mean you know everything. And that always stuck with me, and I've definitely kind of shared that story with a number of people. Just because you're working for a governing body or a Rugby WA or a Western Force, people could definitely see lots of people in Scotland and around the world that because they've got a badge that says they're employed by Australian Rugby, Scottish Rugby, Rugby in the Middle East, that they know everything. And certainly it's But I think that those that make it and do really well and go far have got that self-awareness of this is what I know and this is what I'm good at, and I'm confident to deliver that, but I'm also looking for what else, how can I add to this, how can I get better. I think Gregor Townsend at Scottish Rugby is a prime example of that, because he's the top coach in Scotland at the moment, or one of the top coaches in Scotland at the moment, but he's also always looking for how to change things, how to tweak things, how can I pull information, and kind of Richie Gray that talked about how do you pull information from different sports and different environments, business. It's not necessarily just sports. How do we make things better and keep challenging things? And Scotland being a small country, small rugby pool and population, that was one thing that I think they did really well.
And that's just curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just being curious about how you can do something better.
Yeah, being curious and also just being aware and confident to go and try something. Let's do this. Let's work for that sport or that environment. Let's try it and be confident. All right, it didn't work. That's not going to fit. There we go. Grabs. I suppose it's like rugby away going to the AFL. How do we replicate what they do, because they're massive? Well, it's a totally different beast. But there'll be something in there, and there's no harm in trying. Give it a crack and just be like, right, that didn't work. What next? Or take a step back, or there was a part of it did add a bit of value, and celebrate that and keep trying to be better.
You mentioned earlier about having a coaching team that is able to relate to all the sort of groups across the team. I'm going to put you in a scenario here where you're coaching one of the state teams that you've coached over the last few years, and you've had a coaching team. Have you consciously sat down and said, all right, we need to be able to cover all these players, who relates to who matches up with who? Or is that something that you just get a sense as within the coaching group, and each of you will individually just sidle up to the players that you think you connect with? Is it formal or is it informal?
Yeah, very informal, and more often than not, the conversation or the need of a conversation, depending whether it's positive or negative, is kind of just evolved as we've gone along.
Do you think that's the best way to do it, or do you think if you actually sat down and worked out a formal system of making sure you got to all the players in a variety of circumstances, that would be more effective?
I kind of start thinking that state situation. I did not know, and more often, especially being here in Australia, because I've been here such a short period of time, I didn't really know many of the players or backgrounds, so it took time. In the first couple of years, it was a new coaching team. It was obviously getting to know the coaches as well. Yeah, I suppose in an ideal world, if you go in with a plan and you know everybody, and you know everything about everybody, and you know the strengths and weaknesses, taking that little bit of time could speed up the process down the line. I suppose probably what I did do was like expectations, set standards, and have those conversations and put them out there. So there were some core elements that everybody, players and coaches, management, physios, parents, were aware of from the very start. So it wasn't different conversations. It was maybe just different people having a similar conversation, and it's around about standards, ambition. How do we get better?
How do you reinforce that stuff regularly throughout a preparation program?
One through action, by living it, by being organised, not allowing mistakes that could be avoided to just roll on, and just like identifying, going back to it, having that information, whether it was a presentation at the start that's there, maintaining, so I suppose, the same sort of language, keeping that language clear and consistent through the coaching group, and making sure that I suppose the players and the coaches see that the coaching group are tight and communicating and are delivering the same messages, so that they don't feel comfortable about, oh, well, I can talk to that coach and not that coach. And if I got that coach, I'll get the answer that I want. And that common goal from the outset. I suppose with younger players, it's about their improvement. It's about them fulfilling their potential, and giving them that opportunity to share what they want and they need, and what they want to try and do, what they feel they can try and achieve. And doing that through various ways, through a lot of Google surveys, just through conversations, through being around and being approachable before and after our sessions, not turning up as the session starts and jumping in your car as the session finished. So you've got a presence and they see you a bit more than just the rugby coach in that short environment. It's somebody that's able to support them kind of longer term and maybe more environments than just that one-off game.
And so that's built around your relationship building, isn't it? And so like with you and how you relate to the players, and I've spoken to a few players who they really enjoy who you are to them and how you react to them. What are your strengths in terms of building relationships with players? What do you think you do really well that builds a good relationship?
I think I'm quite relaxed, probably too relaxed, too laid back at times. I find I learn best when I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So I'll try and make sure that everyone's having fun, get the balance right of games versus drills, get the balance right of, yeah, we make mistakes and that's fine, we move on. Just being around and not applying too much stress and pressure, being positive, as was that's a positive psychology side of it. Praise the good stuff, celebrate the wins, not focus too much on the negative. And if there's a big learning opportunity, take it and use it, but spin it into that positive as quick as possible and stay aware. So if there's been a mistake, there's been an issue, if there's a fix comes, whether it's from a coach or a player, highlight and again celebrate that we've got better. That's something to celebrate, that learning.
I get the impression as well that you are very casual and you take a lot of things in your stride, but at the same time I get the impression that you don't suffer fools easily. Like I think if someone is taking the piss, that you'll jump on that pretty quickly and you'll make it clear that that's probably not the way to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't. Yeah, I suppose there was a bit of feedback from the players that at school recently about they're not disciplined enough. And I was like, what do you mean by disciplined? Oh, you don't make us run, you don't punish us. And I'm like, well, that's probably not my style, but I'll have. And probably as a group, they don't see the small conversations I'm having. And I think when people are playing up, it's roundabout behaviours, there's probably a reason, and it's not about me, and it's maybe not about the team. It might be something else going on. So I'll probably more often than not have a conversation and I make them aware of their behaviour or their actions. Sometimes they just don't know, they don't understand, and maybe there is something else going on that's impacting it, and I'll just try and get them to focus on it. Whatever's going on out with rugby, let's just concentrate on rugby for the next hour. Take that time and offer sort of support. Like, do you want any help? Anything I can do to help? More often enough, not it's fine. And just that focus. And everyone's got a life out with rugby.
I get the impression there that that's a skill that you've been able to develop, and you've sort of spoke about it earlier, where you think a lot of young coaches, if there is an issue, they will raise the issue, and it might be just one individual player, but they'll actually have a crack at the player in session in front of everybody else. But you've pretty much said there that there's obviously a reason for that behaviour that may be beyond rugby, maybe somewhere else. And you're able now to be aware of that you don't let it impact the whole squad. You just pull that player aside at a time where everybody else doesn't see it. But you just have that little conversation to say, what's going on? And if you have to you tell them to pull their socks up, they pull their socks up, or you go, look, mate, how can I help you? That looks like something where you reckon a lot of young coaches go the impulsive emotional response, where now you can take that deep breath and go, okay, I can understand why this might be happening.
Yeah, definitely. As a coach, there's so much going on in front of you, and there's lots of mistakes. There's so much you can fix. And as a young coach, people want to fix everything and they want to make a change, so they're constantly telling everybody every time something's gone wrong, and that includes behaviour. If 90% of the group are doing the right thing, then 90% of the group don't need to stop and don't need to be told to change their actions or the behaviours or the skills. And sometimes if it's a confidence thing, that a player calling a player out in front of his mates for not doing the right thing is probably going to have more of a negative effect than anything else, because it draws attention. Then everyone starts asking the player or laughing at the player or finding it funny or applying more pressure on that individual, and then the spiral just keeps spinning down the way. So yeah, more often than not, if there's positive things happening, I'd rather the majority were focusing on the positives than if there's one or two little negative things that can be fixed. But there has been situations where an individual has been sprayed, or a group of individuals have been sprayed in front of everybody. It doesn't happen very often, but I think the cup 2 or 3 occasions in the last few years that has happened. It's had a positive effect. If you're constantly barking and shouting and making noise, and it just becomes white noise, and you don't have that desired effect. Whereas if it's once or twice a year you get angry in front of everybody, and it's probably not calculated that way, but I think in reflection, it probably has a better impact than just constant noise.
Because if it's a rarity, their ears prick up and they listen.
Yeah, that's
Just to finish up a little chat today, I just want to ask you the question, if you think back to your early days as a coach, and then you progress through your coaching career, and you've obviously got a lot more coaching in you, but if you were ending your coaching career, what is the one thing around the mental preparation or the psychology of coaching that you would like to think you've made a massive impact for yourself?
definitely moving from the image of coaching is about skills and drills to coaching is about people, and that's the relationship with your coaching team, the relationship and awareness and acceptance of everyone's different. The players in front of you are all different. They've all got different experiences, background, ambitions. They're there for different reasons, and trying to support and push and make a difference in everybody, or as many people as possible, to make a collective difference, but also being aware you can't support everybody at once. But if you can support key people, that can raise the standards of the bigger group as well. So big thing, probably just awareness of, I suppose, a lot more of the holistic elements and not just skills and drills.
I've seen you coach in action, and I dare say you're well on your way to reflecting that you are very capable of coaching the person or the people, and I've seen that in action. So thank you very much for your time today, Cole. It's been a great chat, and I look forward to maybe a year or two down the track, seeing where you're coaching and having another chat and looking at what has possibly changed from the mental side of things.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining Colin Phillips and myself, Dwayne Nestor, on the Sporting Mindset Show. I hope today's conversation has given you something to think about. And one thing we do know for certain is that mindset matters. So as you move through your week, maybe take a moment to reflect. What mindset are you bringing into your sport, your coaching, your parenting, or your everyday life? If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe, share it with someone who'd benefit from it, and continue being part of a community that values growth, learning, and high performance done the right way. I'm Dwayne Nestor, and this has been the Sporting Mindset Show.